So if you look at what is called Indian foreign policy,
Mm-hmm.
um, there isn't any Indian foreign policy because there isn't a notion of India. Okay.
Uh-huh.
India as such is a nation state which came into being in the 20th century, post the Second World War, when we got our independence.
Okay.
Right. So if you look at those times, those were different dynasties that were ruling uh, from different areas in this geographical entity which has been called India.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, if you look at that book, it'll also talk about the Cholas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Cholas were purely South Indian. They did not have any presence up north. And it is from because they were close to the sea that they built themselves into a naval power. Okay, they
Mm-hmm.
built themselves into a naval power, and having done so, they ran trade along the Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal kind of a thing, right up to uh, right up to Singapore, Thailand, Cambodia, okay, and Cambodia and we'll also
Thailand.
Thailand,
Thailand.
Cambodia, Indonesia,
Indonesia. Okay.
Cambodia, Cambodia.
Mm-hmm.
The Angkor Wat temple there are very famous. Some say they even went up to Japan, but that particular argument is a bit apocryphal in my opinion. It is a
Mm.
bit apocryphal because it does not, there is no uh, proof that the Cholas had gone into Japan. Okay, so the Cholas had a certain kind of trading, which was mainly ocean based or mainly sea based. And they also turned into some kind of a colonial power. And Singapore, as such, that name that you see was originally Simhapuri, okay,
Mm.
which was uh, which is basically what the Cholas called it. But they didn't call it Simhapuri. They called it Singapuri because
Mm.
in the Tamil language there is no ha sound. They don't
Mm.
say ha. They say ga for
Okay.
ha. Okay. Uh, so Singapuri was what it was called, and it became uh, Singapore. I think you have the Thai beer, which is also again Singha.
Mm.
So the this thing of Singha or lion as such is not something you will find in those areas. The lion was not uh, an animal which was there in the Southeast Asian countries so much. The Asiatic lion, as such, didn't go beyond Myanmar and regions like that. So you will see that that is one uh, kind of um, one kind of thing that you need to keep in mind. Okay, so the Cholas were definitely a colonial power as well. They turned into a colonial power. And there were many other dynasties which were, say, up north, which went to the west, northwest. Uh, and there were also people from the northwestern part that came into India. So India, in its inception, India is not self-designated, right? Neither is Hind, Hindustan. None of these are designations that the Indians took for themselves. So what we are looking at is some kind of a movement of people uh, into this country, into this landmass or geographical entity which got the name of India. And later on, it wasn't simply any longer a simple landmass. It was also something which had become some kind of a cultural entity. Okay, so if you look at the epics, uh, if you look at the Ramayana, you look at the Mahabharata and all these epics, what we actually find is that a lot of people uh, uh, came through the Khyber Pass, and there are areas in Afghanistan like Kandahar, which was referred to in the Mahabharata as Gandhar. Okay, and similarly, one more kingdom uh, was Kaika, and the daughter of the king of Kaika was called Kaikeyi, and she is one of the principal characters of the Ramayana. Okay, so whether these are epics, I mean, whether these epics actually happened or whether they were only written is immaterial. It's immaterial because people are talking about a geography that matches that place. They are talking about names that have still some kind of resonance in our this thing. So please be very, very careful when you're looking at the whole idea of uh, India's foreign policy. It'll probably be uh, Chola's foreign policy or Shunga's foreign policy. It'll be those kind of things. It won't be India's foreign policy because India as a political entity didn't appear until the 20th century. Okay, first of all, we must remember that nation states themselves are those which came into being in Europe in the modern period, in the early modern period, thanks to the Peace of Westphalia and those two particular treaties, one which is the Treaty of Osnabrück, and the other one is the Treaty of Munster. Okay, these two treaties actually created the nation state system. And those nation states were nothing like the nation states that came into being 100 years later, because capitalism and colonialism had spread to different parts of the world. And you will see that there was a taking of a certain kind of a political culture unwittingly by the Europeans. That
mm,
thing went unwittingly. And most of the time, you'll see that worldwide, political nationalism is a reaction to colonialism. Okay, it is a reaction to colonialism and what should we say, some kind of an attempt to create, uh, you know, unity among people as not just a culture, not just as a society, but also as a political group, right? So
mm,
you'll see that most of the time, uh, the nation state system happened in the 20th century in all the colonies, which were slowly becoming independent at different points of time in the 20th century. So you can therefore talk about India as a political entity only from the time when Gandhi appeared on the scene and created a mass-based uh, movement, nationalist movement, which caught on the imagination of various people, and it took on a nationwide uh, presence. And at every level, there was opposition to the British rule. Okay, so that foreign policy that comes during Nehru's period, which is Panchsheel. I don't know if you've seen, you've
mm,
gone through that. Those will become the early indicators of India's foreign policy. Okay, immediately post independence from colonialism. So those things will become uh, the thing. Those things will be what uh, you should be concentrating on, while there is absolutely no harm in writing about the past as well.
mm,
Because there are so many myths about India. One of the myths that people generate about India in India is that India never attacked any other power. Okay, which is a stupid thing because these kingdoms uh, within India fought wars. And apart from that, we also find that, like I said, the Cholas, the
mm,
Cheras, and Pandyas, actually, more than the Cheras. These are the people who basically went and conquered foreign territories, and that is how you have common currencies uh,
mm,
in that part of the world. All right. So
mhm,
and, you'll also find that even today in Indonesia, the Indonesian language is full of Sanskrit terms. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but the Indonesian rupiah, which is the
Mhm.
currency, has
Yeah.
the symbol of Lord Ganesha.
Mhm.
Though Indonesia is today the largest Muslim country in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be good to go into those kind of things, but you can't possibly call it nationalism, which is I mean, a policy which is foreign policy and all that of India. India doesn't have
Okay.
foreign policy.
Okay.
I think
Yes, because I also read, so I'm not going so to go in deep in this. I'm not going even to call it foreign policy as like something concrete. Maybe referring about the cultural interchange in that level maybe works
it
because
might
for
be, it might
yeah,
be.
because for example the something called my attention that was about the Mauryan Empire and Kuchanas.
Mm.
Why Kushanas more than Mauryan Empire? Because in this moment, the high relation with China and all this part of the other side of India increased for the commercial relation, and the Buddhism spread
Yeah,
in
but
that.
The Kushans basically were Mongols,
Mhm.
and they took a liking for Sanskrit as a language, and the systems of uh, conduct that were prescribed as poetics of conduct by the Sanskrit language. They
Okay.
were uh, very, very impressed by that. So they came here. Sorry, the Kushans came here, settled here, somewhere up north, near Kashmir and Ladakh. And they also took names which were no longer Mongol sounding names. They had names like Kanishka,
Mm-hmm.
Ubishka, the different emperors. Okay, so that is another thing that you can remember. Yes, there was a lot of like trade activity with some provinces of China, without doubt. But the Mongols, who were generally considered to be marauders, okay, those who went and attacked people, and the Gobi Desert was their this thing where they attacked people. But those people came to India and took on not the Buddhist culture, they took on the ancient Indian Sanatana Dharma culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so that would be an interesting uh, thing to talk about. But now that these two ladies have come some time ago, I'd better shift my focus back to ecology. And I can talk to you anytime about
Sure.
these
This
kinds
last point is very interesting, Sanatana Dharma culture. Even it's first time when I hear that.
of. Okay.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay, thank you, Professor.
right. Uh, so, sorry, ladies, you were a bit late. So I and Maria, we got into a conversation. Uh, right. So let's get on with what we were doing. Uh, Shirley was the only one who was here yesterday. So yesterday I was talking to you about globalization and how, not globalization, I'm sorry. I was talking to you about political ecology, and I was trying to tell you that the political ecosystem is complete rubbish. You shouldn't be using that. Even political ecology would translate into rubbish. But you could retrieve some kind of meaning for that kind of a thing. Now, at when this movement began as such, yesterday I talked to you at length about how the movement began and how it was different from other movements in the sense that other movements were uh, confined to to various different geographies and demographies. But the movement for preservation of the ecology is something that started with uh, global with a global arena. And if you do look at the the idea that I told you yesterday, that the West is still setting the agenda or agendas, if you like, for uh, uh, how to manage ecology. Uh, uh, then I had told you to talk to you about what was the position of uh, uh, India and how India said that we still don't. The Western mindset is that they still set the agenda for the world. And Vijay Parshad, the journalist that I quoted, he said that uh, we are in no way obliged to take the suggestions that you are giving us. Okay, so that brings into question the whole idea of the politics of the ecology, or what has been very unfortunately put in your syllabus as interstate dependencies. It is not so much an interstate dependency. It is a global politics of ecology, and in that there are many hues, many different issues that are taken into consideration. And these issues are those which basically uh, have been, in a way, pushing the agenda of preserving the ecology globally. It's been pushing it forward, but there are also problems wherein uh, people stagnate and probably take a couple of steps back because of the kind of politics that are you know um, introduced uh, by the Western countries. Now, if you basically look at the West, at one time they had what people call the California attitude. Okay, the California attitude is something like this. Uh, California, for some strange reason, has had at one time uh, uh, an economy of its own, and it was placed in the eighth position or seventh. I cannot remember it clearly now. When Ronald Reagan was the governor of California. Now, at that particular time, there was the idea that California is the seventh or eighth biggest economy in the world. And at that particular time, the Californians wanted to make sure that their weather systems, their climate would remain what it was, which is quite salubrious. Okay, it is quite salubrious, it's quite balmy, not barmy, Balmy, balmy. And so they didn't want any kind of warming of the state and all that. So, what Californians did and continue to do till today is that they asked the neighboring state of Arizona. Arizona is one of the hottest states in the United States of America. The heat there is comparable to the heat that we have in India. So they let them set up, uh, what should we say, a number of power plants, again, thermal power plants for the production of electricity. And this electricity was taken into California through the medium of wires. So the place that was generating electricity got hotter and hotter, whereas in California and especially uh, in Hollywood, you would find people making statements about how they cared about the environment. Okay, so they showed their care for the environment. The first company that took advantage of this particular necessity to show that they care for the environment was Toyota with its Prius hybrid car, which had very little tailpipe emissions. And this was also followed by the other Japanese manufacturer, Nissan. Nissan uh, created the Leaf. And so people, when they came and arrived at the red carpet functions that you would see in California, if you see that, the one thing that is very obvious is that they were making a statement, okay, that we care about the environment. Our cars are not polluting. We do not travel uh, in vehicles that pollute. Similarly, they also adopted a number of electronic appliances at home. And again, said, see, these are non-polluting electric appliances. Well, but what was happening in Arizona was that levels of pollution were rising and rising. The heat was going up and up. So you will therefore find that it was not such a great thing after all to make a great, to make a statement about how concerned you are about the environment. In those days, they didn't use the term ecology; they used the term environment. And then, so environment, we are trying to protect the environment. Where are you protecting the environment? In fact, they were doing inner colonialism for a change. Usually, a country took something very bad and did it outside of the boundaries of itself in another country, uh, which is how industrial manufacture started in China, where they said, let it be if you're polluting, but we'll catch up in terms of the size of the economy, and then we can cut down on pollution. Something that China has done pretty decently. So you have to credit them with that. And but here was an instance of uh, the colonialism of sorts within the state, and that within one country between two states which were neighboring each other. So you see, uh, the problem, which was first and foremost called environmental, it slowly shed that term environmental or environment, because they said that, environment can be anything. All right. Uh, you can ask about the political environment of a place. You can ask about the social environment of a place. So, environment, it basically indicated a certain space in which a lot of things took place. Um, well, before the explosion of the population of human beings, we did see that environment did consist mainly of flora and fauna, and that these things were the ones that uh, people were trying to protect. But things changed when people realized that the use of uh, chloro, chlorofluorocarbons in refrigeration of any type, within refrigerators at home and air conditioners, in air conditioners in cars, everywhere. This had burnt a hole in the ozone layer. And please remember that when the Earth is well, it goes anti-clockwise. So while it is rotating on its own axis, the upper layers of the environment do not rotate at the same speed. Okay, they rotate at a different speed, which is much slower. So what has happening is that this hole in the ozone layer that had been made by the excessive usage of chlorofluorocarbons, one found that this had become an entry for ultraviolet rays from the sun. Okay, please remember one thing. People keep talking about nuclear reactors, how dangerous they are. Uh, but perhaps people don't remember that the biggest nuclear reactor for us is the sun. Okay, and so you have ultraviolet emissions, you have all the emissions that you get while you're processing nuclear fuel. And so people suddenly realize that this is no longer a problem of one region, because the hole is there, it is coming, it is turning at a different speed, and the Earth is spinning faster. So every part of the Earth was getting affected by the ozone layer's breach in some way or the other. Okay, and it is at that time that people decided that each one shouldn't just call it environment, because environment also doesn't talk about a very big uh, space. You talk about local environments. So the term ecology came in to replace uh, ecology, the environment. And now people have invented this term ecologism, which I told you is not really a great term, because ecologism is not something that starts with a couple of smaller premises and keeps getting blown into bigger and bigger ideas. It isn't that. The, anybody who wants sustainable ecology will have to look at ecology and try to preserve it. So it's not an ism as such. Okay, but people use it. So if you want to use it, feel free to use it yourself as well. Uh, but that isn't very elegant, nor is it a very correct depiction of what uh, we are talking about the ecology when we say ecologism. So now then there had been a couple of conferences. One of the conferences, one of the biggest conferences was one that was in uh, Brazil, Rio. It was in the 1990s. And I must tell you one of the biggest jokes that I heard at that time. There was a person whom I won't name because this is going on to the public, who represented India, and he was from Hyderabad. He went to the Rio conference, and he was a part of the deliberations of the Rio conference. And he comes back, and I had just started my teaching career then. And there were some students who were very keen on bringing him to uh, speak at Nizam College. And so he came. And he was suggesting alternatives now. I can't remember all those different alternatives. And there's no point in my filling you with information about those. Just remember that these alternatives themselves were not necessarily not polluting. Okay, so at the end of his presentation, I said, where is the guarantee that the alternatives that you are suggesting are those which can protect the ecology or the environment? And he says, see, you're being cynical, but my answer to you is now if we change and adopt these technologies that I am suggesting, uh, we get a 20-year reprieve. I said, what does that mean, that we get a 20-year reprieve? He says, for 20 years, we won't have the problems that we are facing now. Okay. And uh, I said, my question to you is, what makes you think that these are problem free? So for that, again, he says, that is why I'm talking about the 20-year reprieve. The 20-year reprieve is till we know that there are problems with these technologies, we have time. I said, till you know, if you don't know that you have cancer, it doesn't mean that you don't have cancer. You could jolly well be having cancer, and just because you don't know you have cancer doesn't mean you're cancer free. And all these things that you have brought back from Rio as, you know, alternate technologies are hardly alternate technologies. And I said, if you really want to change the ecology of the world, then we're not supposed to be looking for alternate technologies, but we are supposed to be looking for alternatives to technology. Okay, and it's here where Gandhi can be of great use, because Gandhi suggested a way of life which was technology free. Okay, all the uh, great achievements of the Industrial Revolution and all were junked by Gandhi when he said Gram Swaraj and India lives in its villages and it should strengthen its uh, uh, village system, and it should not build. He was even against the building of railways. Gandhi was an eccentric man, but eccentric in a very good way. And so, if you look at that, then that is perhaps an alternative, okay, to this polluting technologies, which is where you're looking at a non-technological life, a non-technological way of living. But it wasn't acceptable to anyone uh, because simply capitalism thrives on consumption. If capitalism has to thrive on consumption, then it has to encourage people to consume more and more. Now, let me tell you an interesting bit of detail here. I hope nobody from the electricity board is listening to me. Okay, well, while people were having power cuts at various places that they were living, we, where we are in Himadnagar, we hardly had any power cuts. So when I asked somebody who I knew in the electricity board, he said, listen, Himadnagar pays some of the highest bills for electrical consumption. Now, if we impose a power cut there and let power be in another place which does not consume great power in great quantities and does not pay big bills, then we are at a loss. So we encourage power consumption. So that is ecologism for you. Okay. And Christina, so people have these different kinds of attitudes. Ultimately, please remember, when it comes to capitalism, where consumption of goods and production for consumption is of paramount importance, to find solutions to ecological problems is not the easiest of exercise in itself. But I had mentioned the Treaty of Westphalia. I talked about the nation state system. One thing that I didn't mention there was that with the Peace of Westphalia, sorry, and with the treaties of Osnabrück and Münster, you had a situation wherein uh, the concept of sovereignty was created. Now, what is the concept of sovereignty? Sovereignty, if you go through the typical idiotic textbooks from school and yeah, from school, you will find it saying supreme power. Okay, and so this supreme power is not like He-Man standing on top of a mountain with a sword drawn like this, and I have the power, and lightning bolts go hit his sword, and he just go kills the villains. It's not that easy. Okay. Now, why were people asking for sovereignty? People were asking for sovereignty because of the fact that the church was otherwise interfering in the internal matters of every principality. Okay, so when the uh, Peace of Westphalia established a nation state system, in that kind of a system, they said each nation state has its own sovereignty, which means that what I do in my own territory, what I do in my own kingdom is nobody else's business. Okay? It's nobody else's business. That is a matter that is absolutely internal to us. So leave us alone. Don't try to look in and try to interfere with uh, our own power to govern ourselves. That was sovereignty. Now, as you see, even today in the 21st century, sovereignty, though spoken about in very few uh, world fora and in very small voices, continues to exist. And it is the existence of this sovereignty which has been one of the big stumbling blocks for the maintenance of the ecology. Because take a country like India, okay? Uh, India has a landmass which is the seventh biggest landmass in the world. Okay, at that time, it was as far as population was concerned, it was the second biggest. Now we are the kings of the world. Okay, you can say, come and kill us. There are more of us, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we basically talk about uh, this particular aspect of how do I take care of my resources. Now, India has an internal ecology problem because of the burgeoning human population. What is happening is that the forest cover has been dwindling at an alarming rate. Okay, today people say that there is some 7 or 8% uh, forest cover in India, but I doubt very much. I'm not one of the doubters. There are other skeptics like me who would believe that it is probably 3 or 4% and not more. And in doing so, in why did this happen? This happened because we were, as human population grew, the pressure for newer settlements came up. So people went into the forest areas. They started doing some kind of agriculture there, replacing the forest with uh, agricultural plants, which is not a very good thing, by the way. If you read this particular essay, a very big one by Jean-Paul Sartre. The essay is called Critique de la raison dialectique, which translates into English as the critic of dialectical reasoning. Okay, so it's an anti-Marxist thing and an anti-Chinese thing. Now he says Marx talks about praxis, and he says Marx is no better than any of the other people who came before him, holding the torch aloft for industrialization. Says Marx is no better than them because Marx wanted the preservation of industries. He only wanted the destruction of the class structures and he wanted everyone to work. So he said praxis is, combination of theory and practice. So he said praxis should be this. But what uh, Sartre argues is that for every praxis, there is a practico inert. Okay, a practico inert. If you look at that particular word, that particular expression, a practical inertness. You do something actively, but something passively is sitting there to destroy it. So he gives the example of what the Chinese peasantry did in the 1930s and 1940s. What the Chinese peasantry did at that particular time was to bring in greater food. And remember, at that time, China was the most populated country in the world. So what they started doing is they started cutting down forests and converting them into agricultural lands, which worked as a strategy wonderfully for about uh, easily for about 3 or 4 years, and uh, and then came the problem. The problem that came was that there were huge rains, and these rains started bringing all kinds of calamities and problems. The calamities, typically, too much of water, and you also know that uh, stones and other things keep come rolling down mountains. So all those things happened. And the agricultural produce of China then was completely lost. And what they realized is for the next 2 years, whenever there was rain, there was topsoil erosion. If you have topsoil erosion, then you don't have nutrients of the soil underneath the topsoil sitting where they are. They also get washed away when a big, uh, you know, uh, wave of water comes. So they had converted their forest lands into agricultural lands only to suffer from topsoil erosion and other problems. And the food production went down by some 17%. And so the consumption will also have its ramifications. And so Sartre said that this whole thing that Marx also tries to say that I have a better system than what John Locke or Jeremy Bentham says. He says he's not much better than anything else anyway. And later, Habermas also calls him a uh, positivist and a scientific person, doing Habermas now. So I will not get into what is a scientific person. A scientific person, let us for a moment look at its simplest definition: somebody who reposes faith in the positivist kind of science. Okay, and therefore, the whole school of critical theory, the whole school of critical theory, which is, uh, you know, based in Germany, and its origins actually are in Hungary. One of the first critical thinkers is supposed to be Georgi Lukács, and apart from Lukács, you later on had Herbert Marcuse, and then you had uh, Theodore Adorno, who talked about negative dialectics, and then you had Max Horkheimer and Eric Fromm and the great Habermas himself. Okay, so if you look at all these things, uh, what is apparent is that technology, as long as we repose our faith in it, is a problem. And this problem is exacerbated by sovereignty. Why? Because when India was cutting down forests, okay, when India was cutting down forests for the sake of accommodation of more people and more agricultural land, India played havoc with its own ecology. Okay, elephant roots, elephants, the memory of an elephant is simply fantastic. And the matriarchal elephant, the matriarch, sorry, uh, actually leads the entire elephant herd in the direction of drinking water holes and plush vegetations in different seasons. Now, they are used to a certain way of traveling. And instead of a forest, if they suddenly have what you call a uh, agricultural piece of land with a few huts or houses for dwelling, then the elephants actually get mad. They don't get mad as in they go mad, no. They get angry, and that is the reason why they have known to be extremely destructive. They have been known to be extremely destructive in areas of Bengal, areas of Assam, and even Bihar. Okay, and here down south uh, in Andhra Pradesh, in the Chittor district. So if you look at this, and people had to rebuild the forests. People had to rebuild the forest, but then elephant is only one thing. You don't know how many species you're killing per day. You don't know because nobody has taken a census of what are the different kinds of species, how many different kinds of birds are there, why, where do they nest, how do they grow. All this information is not available. So without our knowing, uh, ecology is changing rather rapidly. And this rapid changing of the ecology is basically that which one should remember is the reason why we have the El Nino, La Nina uh, kind of phenomena. And this, like I said, it's not anymore confined to territorial borders. It is something that is uh, which has repercussions worldwide. So when India was asked not to cut down trees, it took India some time to heal because India, uh, you know, basically said, no, we won't listen to what you have to say. We won't listen to what you have to say simply for the reason that this is sovereignty, a matter for our own country. Okay, a matter for our own country, and uh, don't involve yourself in this. That's what they were saying. And Robert Mugabe, whose witticisms are pretty well known, uh, told the West that he said, first give us uh, development at your rate without saying take money on loan. No money on loan, develop us as developed you are. And then we'll all sit and talk together as equals about what is the way forward for the preservation of the ecology. And today we are again in a position where we are boasting of our population because we are saying that we have a population dividend it's a dividend because it's a population that consists of very young people like Christina. And so what happens is that the average age of the Indian is somewhere in the 20s. Okay, whereas the average age of the Japanese is somewhere in the 80s or 90s. Japanese are known to live for 120, 130 years. Okay, China's population is also growing old. They have also crossed 60. Okay, so we say we are the future, but we have to exist in order to be the future. So that is one thing that one should remember. So I'll stop here now because I can feel uh, one of my turns coming on. So thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Those protocols and all those, please, uh, you should read by yourselves. Okay. It doesn't really make any sense, my teaching you those protocols. All right. So thank you very much. And tomorrow we'll go on to whatever. I can't remember now. Okay, then.
Thank you,
Tell,
Professor.
sorry, Shirley.
Thank you, Professor.
Oh, you're thanking me. Okay. Christina, tell Nitika, yeah,
Yeah.
that I am your biggest fan and she's not your fan at all. She doesn't attend classes. Okay, so I take this, and I'm not her fan anymore.
Okay.
Right. Thanks a lot. See you
Thank,
tomorrow.
thank you, sir.
See you. Thanks.
Right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Lavanya finally got scared and came. Otherwise, I was thinking of where to settle and how to settle in Udupi. Yeah, thanks. My sick jokes. Bye.